I failed. I sat down with 20 years of LSAT teaching experience and tried to write a question so hard no human being could answer it. And I could not do it. The LSAT would not let me. Every time I pushed past a certain level of difficulty, the question just stopped working. It stopped being answerable and stopped being a question at all. And what I found staring at my broken question is going to change how you see every hard problem on the LSAT, because the LSAT has a ceiling. It has a hard ceiling on how difficult it can possibly get. And that ceiling is made of 3 rules the test writers can never break. And those rules don't just limit the test, they make the hardest questions on the entire LSAT the most predictable of all. And I know that sounds insane, but I want you to stay with me. My name is Steve Schwartz. I raised my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175, and I've been teaching this exam since 2005. But the biggest thing that changed the way I teach was when I sat down and wrote over 1,000 detailed explanations for 1,000 logical reasoning questions, including all 5 answer choices, full breakdowns of every argument and every flaw. And going in, I assumed the hardest questions would be chaos, because that's what everybody assumes. The tough LSAT questions must be wild or unpredictable, off the wall with some brand new trap and some exotic twist you've never seen before. And I was dead wrong. By explanation 200, I noticed something. And by 500, it was undeniable. And by question 1000, it was almost boring. The hardest questions follow the same patterns. And I don't mean similar patterns here, I mean the exact same patterns, with the same reasoning structures, the same answer choice tricks, same linguistic cues, across tests, across years, across decades. So I call this the difficulty paradox. The harder an LSAT question gets, the more predictable it becomes. So think, for example, about chess. A beginner's moves will look kind of random with pieces everywhere, no logic to the board. But a chess grandmaster? Every move follows deep, recognizable patterns. Openings you can name, structures you can study. The better the player, the more structured the game. The LSAT's hardest questions are studyable. They are grandmaster moves. Now, most LSAT prep ignores this completely. Most prep treats every hard question like a brand new animal. Here's a unique question, here's how to solve this one specific question, good luck on the next one. But that approach keeps you dependent forever, because you're always meeting something new. But the questions aren't actually new. They only look new. Underneath, they are the same machine wearing just different costumes. And so I want to strip the costume off and show you the underlying core. There are 3 rules the LSAT can never break. I call this the question architecture. And I'm going to give you all 3, and then I'm going to walk you through how to see all 3 working at the same time. Rule number 1 is the conclusion lock, because every argument on the LSAT must have a main conclusion you can find. Every single one, no exceptions. Without one, the question doesn't test reasoning, it tests your tolerance for nonsense, and the LSAT doesn't really do nonsense. And so when you hit a wall of jargon with some niche regulation or some obscure philosophical claim, I want you to stop, because there is a conclusion in that argument. By definition, the test writers have to give it to you. You want to find the one claim everything else supports. And the moment you find it, half the complexity disappears instantly. Then rule number 2 is the premise framework. Every sentence must serve a purpose with no throwaway lines. Every premise supports either the conclusion, sets up the gap, or provides context. So I want you to stop reading passively and start reading like you're looking at a blueprint. If you hit a confusing sentence, ask one question. What is this doing? Now, you don't need to be an expert in the topic. You've got to see how the pieces connect. And the rules do guarantee they will connect. Then rule 3, and this is the big one, is the answer choice architecture. Every wrong answer must be wrong for a real defensible reason. And the right answer must hold up to scrutiny. And that puts a hard cap on what can show up in those 5 choices. Now, I tracked every wrong answer type across 1,000 different questions, and I found 7 distinct tricks. That's right, 7. 20 years of exams, 1,000 questions, and only 7 tricks. That is the whole menu. They will, for example, distort the conclusion. They'll bring in something irrelevant. They'll swap a key word, like some becomes all or might becomes will. And they sound smart, but they address the wrong part of the argument. 7 moves, that is it. Now, let me show you how all 3 of these could work inside a single question, because I want you to feel this for yourself. Suppose the LSAT gives you this argument. A study found that students who eat breakfast score higher on exams. Therefore, eating breakfast improves exam performance. Let's lock in on the conclusion. You spot the conclusion immediately. Eating breakfast improves exam performance. Done, that is your anchor. Then you've got the premise framework with one premise. A study found a correlation between breakfast and higher scores. The premise, of course, does support the conclusion, but there's a gap. A big one here. The study found a correlation, and the conclusion is claiming causation. Maybe the students eating breakfast also study more or sleep more. Maybe they come from wealthier households. The argument jumped right over those possibilities. Now let's look at the choices, because before you look at the choices, though, you got to understand what the right answer needs to do. It needs to address that gap between correlation and causation. And you already know what the wrong answers are going to do. There's going to be an answer that says something like, the study did not account for the student's prior academic performance, which sounds smart, sounds related, but it does not address whether breakfast causes higher scores. It just points to a detail the study did not mention. That is the irrelevant detail trick. That is one of the 7 tricks. And you're going to see that exact move in close to half the hard questions you run into. Now, you want to predict the answer before you read a single choice. That takes about 15 seconds. Now, here's the part that really made me angry when I discovered this. That exact flaw, correlation jumping to causation, doesn't show up once on the LSAT. It shows up dozens, if not hundreds of times across different exams in different years with different topics. Sometimes it's breakfast and test scores. Other times it's a new drug and patient outcomes. Sometimes it's advertising spending and revenue. The topic changes every time, but the skeleton underneath is identical. And once you see that, you start to feel cheated, because most LSAT prep, the books, the courses, the tutors, they treat each of these questions like it's unique or a separate puzzle, like it's a separate beast, but it's not. You already solved this question in the past. They just changed the topic and rearranged the furniture. And honestly, this made me rethink how I had been teaching the LSAT, because for years, even I was overcomplicating hard questions for my own students. I was treating the hardest problems as if they demanded something extra, something beyond the fundamentals, but they don't. They only demand that you apply the fundamentals precisely and consistently. And that realization changed my entire approach. The hard version of this question doesn't use a new flaw. It takes that same correlation to causation jump and wraps it in dense technical language. It buries the conclusion in the middle of the paragraph. It adds a conditional claim that muddies the structure. But once you strip away the costume and see the skeleton, it's the same question you've solved 50 times before. That difficulty is not invention, it's assembly. It's how they designed the questions. They are not building new weapons. They are combining existing ones more densely. And if you have already trained on the individual parts, the combination's not going to scare you. Now, this right here is the gap between students stuck in the 150s and 160s and those breaking into the 170s. It is not intelligence, it is pattern recognition. Last year, I had a student stuck at 163 for months, and we spent 2 tutoring sessions, just 2, labeling flaw types and practicing predicting the answer before looking at the choices. And she hit a 172 on her next practice test. Not because she got smarter in a single week, of course, but because she stopped solving new questions and started recognizing old ones. Now, here is the part that sounds completely backwards. Top scorers actually find the harder questions more comfortable than the medium difficulty ones. And I know that sounds crazy, but the thing is, the hardest questions are the purest expression of the LSAT's patterns. And the system is most visible when it's working the hardest. When you have internalized the system, that purity of recognition is your biggest advantage. And that is something most prep completely overlooks. Your emotional state on the LSAT matters way more than anybody tells you. When you hit a hard question and feel lost, your brain goes into panic mode. You rush, you second guess, you pick answers based on feeling rather than logic. And that panic is what actually costs you the points, not the difficulty of the question. But when you know, not hope, when you know that this hard question follows the same rules you've drilled hundreds of times, you're going to feel calm, you'll feel in control, and you'll look at a question everybody else thinks is impossible, and you'll think to yourself, I know exactly what this is, and you know how to solve it. And that is not false confidence, you have earned it through your prep. And so here's what I want you to do. Next time you sit down with a practice section, try this. Before you look at the choices, say out loud in your own words what the flaw is. Predict or prephrase what you need the right answer to say. And then look and check the choices. If you have been drilling the patterns, you're going to nail it. And the first time it works, it's going to kind of freak you out because you'll realize you're not solving the question, you are predicting it. Try this on logical reasoning first, then try it on reading comp. Because I tested whether this paradox holds for reading comp too, and good news, it does. It's the same rules, the same playbook of traps. And so right now, I'm actually creating video explanations for every single reading comp passage ever released, and I'm putting them on YouTube for free. You can already find some of those explanations on the live tab of the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel because the patterns are there, and I want you to be able to see them. Now, if the LSAT's toughest questions scare you right now, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not scared because the questions are unpredictable. You're scared because you haven't seen the patterns yet, but the patterns are there, and they've always been there, and they are completely learnable. And that's what we show our students how to do at LSAT Unplugged through our live classes, our on-demand courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. We create for you a personalized study plan and walk you through every single question giving you trouble. Not to get to the right answer, but to show you the pattern behind the right answer so that next time you see it and the 50 times after that, you're going to recognize it on sight. Now, if you want somebody to sit with you personally and show you these patterns inside the questions you're getting wrong, that's what we do at LSAT Unplugged. I'm actually offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this live, now or later. The link to book that free tutoring with me personally is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. And for those just joining, I offer these lives for free every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. Again, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. I see Carissa's asking about the reading comp explanations. And so I'm actually recording those live as a separate live from my regular 2 p.m. Eastern live. And so I already recorded a set a little bit earlier today. You can watch the recording of that live on the YouTube channel through the link in my bio. And I might record another set today if I have the time. They'll just pop up in your feed, hopefully. Or you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on TikTok, and get notified, hopefully, by the algorithm when those come up. But the thing is that, honestly, the algorithm doesn't really promote these lives because they can't run ads during a live. And so the only way these lives grow is through word of mouth. I really do appreciate your support in spreading the word. If you could share this to your TikTok social, share it on YouTube, or share it in your group chats, Discord, subreddit, Facebook groups. I do appreciate the support. The more this grows, the more I'll expand it over time. And one of the reasons I'm actually recording these reading comp explanations live is because of all your support. So I do appreciate that and want to thank you for that by sharing more. So I do see some questions here in the chat. I'll get to as many of those as I can. Just keep dropping in your questions, anything at all, LSAT and law school admissions. I will get to as many of your questions as I can. I see Oz is asking, is it possible to get a 170 plus with 3 months of studying? I mean, I'll ask you this. If I told you it wasn't possible, would you stop trying? Of course, it is possible. I'll say that right now. But the question is, assume that it is, and then work backwards from the end goal and say, I believe it is possible. What am I going to do to make it happen? Do you think there has ever been another student who has scored a 170 plus studying for only 3 months out of the hundreds of thousands of people who've taken the LSAT before in the past couple of years? Probably. Of course, they're probably the exception rather than the rule. And so the question is, what will you do differently to distinguish yourself from all the people who don't hit that goal? Because by definition, only about 4% of LSAT takers hit a 170 plus. Only 1% hit a 175 plus. And so if you want to score higher than the vast majority of people, you've got to study differently than the vast majority of people. So if most people put in 5-10 hours a week, can you put in 15-20 hours a week? If most people just self-study with YouTube videos and PDFs, can you take a course? Can you get coaching? Can you get some personal feedback on what you're getting wrong and why? Because the thing is that when you're studying on your own, you don't know what you don't know. But once we add that support into the mix, there's usually a pretty quick score boost, meaning there's going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit. So think through what it would take to make it impossible for you to fail. What would guarantee you would hit 170 plus? And the thing is that most people's scores actually drop 5 to 8 points from their practice tests to the actual. And so we got to raise your baseline. If you want to hit a 170 on test day, you want your practice test to be a 175 plus so that you got that buffer in place. Now, I see relatedly, Tom is asking, my diagnostics at 142 is a 170 unlikely. Again, same thing. You want to get a 28-point increase. You want to get a 35-point increase so that you have that buffer in place. You want to raise your baseline. If you're at a 142, there's probably a pretty big gap in the fundamentals that we got to correct first and foremost, and so I would start there. And Lizzie's asking, what's the very first step to studying for the LSAT? Take a cold diagnostic, see where you stand, establish that baseline, look at the gaps in your fundamentals. There are roughly 15 different types of logical reasoning questions, for example. You got strengthen, weaken, flaw, parallel, resolve, and so on. There's also reading comp to work on. Then you got pacing and time management, doing individual sections, and full-length exams to build up your endurance. That's the whole gamut beginning to end, right? So it's starting with logical reasoning fundamentals. We can divide LSAT prep, broadly speaking, into 3 major phases: accuracy, pacing, and endurance. Accuracy is building the fundamentals and drilling questions by type. Then pacing is doing the timing work. Endurance is doing the full-length exams. And so first step, take the cold diagnostic, then work on fundamentals. If you've got, say, 3 months till you're taking the LSAT, maybe devote 1 month to foundational work, 1 month to time management, 1 month to endurance, broadly speaking, of course. I wouldn't actually delay full exams till the very final month, but giving each month, broadly speaking, a particular emphasis. Now, I see Byrne is asking, other than grades, what can I do as a senior in high school to best prepare me for the LSAT and law school? Well, if you're a senior in high school, I would focus on getting into college and enjoying college, choosing a major, maintaining a good undergraduate GPA. The LSAT's not going anywhere. You don't need to spend 5 years studying for it, although your LSAT score is good for 5 years. I would probably just take a couple of years to explore whether you want to start with, whether you want to actually pursue the law, pursue the LSAT, maintain a good undergraduate GPA. But the LSAT will be here when you're ready for it. Of course, if you wanted to do some pre-LSAT work, I would say maybe you want to start by reading difficult, dense text, maybe taking some class in logic, for example. That will, of course, go beyond what you need for the LSAT, but if you would legitimately enjoy it, it would relate, of course. A great pre-LSAT book I would recommend is A Rule Book for Arguments by Anthony Weston. It's a short, very concise, logical reasoning manual, but it's not LSAT specific, but a good way to dip your toes into the waters of the LSAT world. I see Ryan saying, thanks to your videos, you gave me the idea to ask for a scholarship reconsideration, and I got $45,000. That's pretty awesome, Ryan. Congrats. I'm really happy to hear it. I mean, scholarship negotiation works. The thing is, hardly anybody thinks to do it, but Ryan, you're proof that as simple as asking a couple emails back and forth might earn you $45,000, tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship money. Certainly worth asking, worth negotiating, like the future lawyer that you are, right? It's to be expected. And if you're not negotiating, you're leaving money on the table. They have it in their budgets ready to up offers for people, but if you don't ask, you don't get. I see Braden's asking, if AI is threatening a lot of entry-level jobs, how might law graduates use their degrees to remain unique? Okay, solid question, right? I mean, I think the question is, what can you do that AI cannot do? Because AI can, of course, review documents. It can summarize things. So what is your unique value add as a human beyond summarizing things and reviewing documents? I would say that as AI becomes more prevalent, the human becomes more unique and more highly valued. And so, for example, networking, negotiation, generating business, AI might be able to perform a task, but doesn't have the creativity necessarily to know what should be done, how to prioritize tasks, and to maintain human relationships that can help to generate business and help to negotiate. So, do you have people skills? Are you good with interviewing? Are you ambitious and willing to go the extra mile to reach out to people and be persistent? A lot of folks who make big money as attorneys in big law don't actually review documents. They just generate business, but by being able to bring in the business, that is their unique value add, and they get a big cut of whatever deals are generated. That might be one area to explore. But ultimately, I would say talk to current practicing attorneys who do what you want to do. They will have more insight into this than I would. But awesome questions, folks. Keep them coming. Scanning through here for more questions coming in. I see Juan is asking, how is a 161 LSAT score? That's what I just got. Well, congrats, a 161 is above average. The question is, what LSAT score do you need to achieve your goals? Because what is a good LSAT score or a great LSAT score is honestly just relative. It's relative to what you need to get into a particular law school or to get scholarship money at a particular law school. The best way to know what kind of score you need is to look at the American Bar Association 509 reports. They will show you the median LSAT scores and GPAs of every accredited law school in the country. And the higher your LSAT score is above the medians, the more likely you are to get in, the more likely you are to get scholarship money. But it's all relative. And so for a lower ranked law school, a 161 LSAT might be sufficient to get you in. Maybe it might get you some scholarship money. But of course, a 170 LSAT will get you into better law schools and get you more scholarship money. So 161 is good in that it's above the average LSAT score in general, but it may not be enough depending on where you want to go. We also got to consider, of course, your GPA. If your GPA is below the medians, then you're going to want to have a relatively higher LSAT score to compensate. And if you want to get some guidance and support on how to raise your LSAT score or get a sense of what kind of LSAT score you need, of course, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. Personally, the link to book that free lesson is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. That's an open offer for everybody watching this now or later, by the way. I see Young is asking, how should pre-law students go about finding scholarships with their high scores? So if you mean high LSAT scores, the good thing is that the scholarships actually come to you, in that you're not applying to random organizations or community institutions asking for scholarships. I mean, you can, but that's more of a thing for undergrad. When it comes to getting scholarships for law school, it's really more about getting offers from the law schools themselves. It's more of a negotiation based on merit, right? So you have some scholarships based on financial need, meaning if you can demonstrate financial hardship, law schools might offer you scholarship money just because they want to help you meet the tuition needs based on your need. But most law school scholarships are coming down to merit, meaning if your numbers are strong relative to their typical entering student, relative to their medians, then they will offer you money to incentivize you to choose their law school in particular. So you don't apply to a separate scholarship program, although those do exist. It's more about just getting higher numbers. Stronger GPA, stronger LSAT score can make it more likely that you get in and also get scholarship money. Now, Molly's asking, what is the lowest score they usually accept? To be frank, Molly, I don't really love the framing of the question, right? It's like, what's the bare minimum I could do to get in anywhere? That's not going to get you the best outcomes. Instead, I'd think about what LSAT score would I need to get a full ride to law school? I mean, that's a much more appealing goal to me than just getting in somewhere or anywhere. Because if you get in with the bare minimum, they're not going to give you any scholarship money, meaning that you will be paying sticker price tuition for one of the lowest ranked law schools. And the problem there is you're taking on debt most likely, instead of paying, unless you could pay it all out of pocket. But on top of that, the worst ranked law schools also have worse employment outcomes and lower bar passage rates. So I wouldn't want you to go to a law school where you're paying sticker price tuition, meaning you're paying full price, for a law school that has pretty poor outcomes. Instead, I would want you to either one of three options: go to a lower ranked school with more scholarship money, meaning you apply with strong numbers to a lower ranked school, but in exchange for giving up a bit of prestige of the school's brand name, they're giving you a full ride. That's one outcome. Another outcome is you go to a higher ranked law school with less scholarship money, meaning that you sacrifice some scholarship money in exchange for getting a more prestigious degree from a better ranked school. Or with super high numbers, you get into a higher ranked school while still getting lots of scholarship money. To me, that is the optimal outcome, of course, but that would require a really high LSAT and a really high GPA. Now, there are some law schools that technically will accept you with an LSAT score in the high 140s, maybe, or mid 140s, but those law schools have pretty poor outcomes. I don't think it's worth attending a law school with that would take you with such a low LSAT score. But instead, if you can get at least a 160, 165, you're going to get much better outcomes. And that's what I would shoot for, at least. You wouldn't know me anyways, asks, awesome username, by the way. Do you have any idea on what a person that has no law schools within hours of them can do? I hear you on that. Yeah. So let's say there is no law school within a reasonable commuting distance. You have some good options in 2026 relative to say 2016. Now there are more and more law schools that have online degree programs and hybrid degree programs as well. Totally online, meaning that you can go to law school without any traveling or commuting at all. You do your degree entirely from home. There are a couple of law schools that offer 100% online JDs. St. Mary's Law School in Texas is one prominent example there. Pretty competitive, of course, because there are so few law schools offering these programs, but that is one option. Then there's the hybrid programs that are mostly online, but you do have to go to the law school campus in person a couple of times per semester. The American Bar Association website has a big list of all of these programs. Keep in mind that they are competitive because there are not that many seats for these programs relative to the number of people who want to do them, so it is tough to get in, but that would be the optimal solution for you considering geographic constraints. I see Aces is asking, I got accommodations in university. Can I apply for accommodations on the LSAT? Yes, you can. And so it is actually easier than ever before to get accommodations on the LSAT, to get extra time, extra breaks, take it over the course of multiple days, possibly. Standard accommodations would be time and a half, meaning that rather than taking 35 minutes per section, you get 53 minutes per section, or you get double time, meaning that you get 70 minutes per section rather than 35. Of course, the downside of extra time is that it makes for a longer testing day. So a standard LSAT test day is roughly 2.5 hours, with time and a half closer to 4 hours. Double time is 5 hours, of course. So endurance matters more when you have extra time worth taking into consideration. I would recommend maybe taking a practice test under your extra time conditions before requesting them, because once you get them, you gotta be careful what you wish for, right? But of course, overall, I think extra time does help. And as long as you apply within the deadlines for accommodations, you could probably get what you're asking for. I see Madison's asking, hey, does undergrad prestige and high GPA help to get into top schools or just the LSAT? Well, all of the above could help, right? I mean, law school admissions is primarily numbers driven. It's your LSAT score plus your GPA, with everything else being a distant third. So high GPA definitely is going to help a lot. Your LSAT score will also help a lot. Undergrad prestige maybe helps a little bit, but not a ton. I wouldn't over-index on the prestige of your undergrad because you can't just coast on that. It's more about how you did in undergrad versus where you went. And of course, grade inflation will vary based on whether you did humanities or STEM. And so because there is grade inflation, law schools discount GPA in favor of LSAT, which is considered a more objective metric. I see Koshiro's asking, is it true that law schools are regional in the sense that where you go to school is where you will work and live after graduation? For most law schools, yeah. I mean, there are, of course, the top-ranked national schools like the T14, like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Columbia, Cornell, NYU. And those law schools have reputations that extend beyond their immediate region. So going to Harvard or Yale, of course, people have heard of those all across the country and across the world, really. And so those are not regional, but most law schools outside of the top 20, top 30 are more regional in that their reputations are primarily best in their particular city or tri-state area, for lack of a better word. And so you probably don't want to go solely based off of the US News rankings when considering where to go. Like if you want to go to law school, if you want to practice law in California, you might be better off going to a lower ranked UC school than a school in New York or Florida or Texas, because people in California won't be as familiar with those law schools, and so the prestige won't be as important or as well regarded. Daniel asks, how do you feel about the T14 individual rankings in terms of reliability? Not very much. I don't over-index on those, right? I mean, they're called the T14 because while they might shift around within that set, they're still consistently in that range. But whether a school is ranked 7 one year and 10 another year and then 4 another year, I don't think that really matters. You know that it's going to change year by year, and where the school starts when you're entering may not be where it ends up once you graduate. And I feel like the rankings only change because if they didn't change the formulas every year and they remained static, they wouldn't be talked about every year when the announcement comes out of their existence in the new rankings. And so the rankings are not reliable, but they do still confer prestige, broadly speaking. So if you can go to a T14 law school, it might be worth going, especially if you want to go to big law, of course. You Wouldn't Know Me is asking, do you think being a court reporter would have any benefit regarding scholarships? Well, I think it might help to get in a little bit in that law schools will trust that you have more real world exposure to the law than a lot of other applicants. But will they give you scholarships for that? I don't know about that. It might help to be a tiebreaker, but admissions is mostly LSAT and GPA. It's not nearly as much about your work experience or your resume or essays and such. All of that is icing on the cake, but you got to have the numbers first and foremost. But certainly you could probably write a pretty interesting couple of essays about your experience as a court reporter. And so certainly worth highlighting that not only in your resume, but also in your application essays. Now, Koshiro is asking, what do you think of USD as a law school? I personally haven't been there, don't have a lot of direct experience with it. I mean, there's 200 different ABA-approved law schools, and I don't have a lot of experience directly with any one of them in particular. If you're looking into a given law school, I would look at a couple things. What are their employment outcomes? What are their bar passage rates? For employment outcomes, you want to look at what percentage of the graduates are employed in work requiring a JD within 9 months of graduation. And that and the bar passage rates you can see directly in the ABA 509 reports to get a sense of which law schools have the best outcomes. You can also look up, of course, their LSAT and GPA meetings to see what numbers you would need to be competitive for admission to that school. You could also visit the school directly, attend any online webinars they have for admissions purposes, talk to their admissions officers, set up an informational interview, basically requesting to speak with admissions to ask some nuanced questions that you cannot get answers to from their website alone. Talk to alums, network on LinkedIn. Do your research. This is a big investment you're making. It's a 6-figure investment, and it will take up 3 years of your life and help to set the trajectory of the rest of your legal career. And so you do want to do some research into the law school before you decide to go there. But rather than just asking me what I think, I would talk to the schools directly and talk to their alums directly. I see a question about converting GPAs into the LSAC scale. I would get your transcripts over to LSAC ASAP and see how they convert things, and then challenge it if you need to. Do that sooner rather than later because it takes time for your undergrad to send over the transcript. You don't want your applications delayed because you're waiting on bureaucratic backlogs and such. I see Ari is asking, do you think accounting is a good undergrad for law school? I'm looking to practice business and corporate law. So if you have a background in accounting, that will certainly help you for business and corporate law because you're more proficient in numbers than most pre-laws, of course. That definitely is going to help. But law schools don't really care what you majored in. You can major in literally anything and go to law school, meaning there are no prerequisites to attend law school in particular. You can major in STEM, you can major in comp sci, you can major in English. Does not matter. All they want to see is a solid GPA, a solid LSAT score. If you have some real world exposure to the practice of law, definitely mention that somewhere on your application. Because accounting and proficiency in numbers is the exception rather than the rule in the pre-law space, having that background will certainly help, and you do want to make sure law schools are aware, and of course they'll see that on your transcript. I see Madison's asking, any schools come to mind when you think of immigration and civil rights law? I'm a junior narrowing down. I would look at the clinics they're offering because immigration and civil rights are perfect topics for legal aid clinics that you can participate in as a law student. And some schools will have more robust clinics than others. And so where the school is investing in clinics will give you a sense of what the community is like for those topics in particular and giving you some hands-on experience in that area to decide whether you really like it before deciding to pursue jobs in that work. I see Brutal's asking, what about being in law enforcement for 16 years as far as life experience on the resume? Law schools are going to love to see that. Definitely highlight that. And you will, of course. I mean, you spent 16 years there. Of course, you're going to want to talk about it. And yes, it will be helpful. So talk about it in your application essays, for sure. Get rec letters from your employers there too, your supervisors there too. They'll definitely want to see that. That's definitely going to help. I see Blueberry's asking, I'm so overwhelmed with LSAT studying. Where do I start? That's a big question. I mean, one of the things that we do for our students at LSAT Unplugged is help you craft a personal day-by-day study plan, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now till your test. So we look at where you're currently at, what your goal score is, what your time frame is, and then we craft an action plan to get you from your current score to your goal by your LSAT test day. We got to break it down step by step because there are a lot of different steps to getting ready for the LSAT. I talked earlier about accuracy and pacing and endurance, building a solid foundation in the different sections of the LSAT, the different question types, then working on time management, how you allocate your time over the course of the section, and then pulling it all together with full-length time practice tests. But it is overwhelming, of course, because there are a lot of different question types and a lot of different LSAT practice tests, and you want to make sure that you're using them the right way. You don't want to burn through valuable, limited practice material. And so if you're overwhelmed, that's the perfect reason to reach out to me. You could book a free tutoring lesson with me, and we could talk through it more personally. The link to book the free tutoring with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. If you haven't booked that call with me, this is the best time to start. Well, the best time was yesterday. The second best time is today. But in particular, for those of you taking the LSAT in June or August, this is the perfect time to get started with coaching because time's running out. You want to make a massive impact on your score. You want to make sure that you're studying as efficiently as possible. Of course, for those taking the LSAT in 1 week for the April test, good luck to you. But I want you to use your time with only 1 week remaining, focusing on taking practice tests and reviewing them in depth. But with 2 months till June or 4 months till August, we've got plenty of time to make a significant impact on your studying, level up your efficiency, help you make some real gains. Now I see Calissa is asking about personal statements. Until you've got your official LSAT score on record, it's not worth talking about the application essays because your LSAT score is the biggest and most important factor in the law school admissions process. If you don't have the score, I'll be frank, nothing else really matters. If you have secured the score, then we can switch gears and focus on the application essays, but we're not going to talk about that until you've locked down your LSAT score. Anything else would be premature. Now I see Olive is asking, why do law schools have such a heavy emphasis on the LSAT? Well, it's because it's the single objective metric they can look at to evaluate you as an applicant because GPAs are unreliable. There's a lot of grade inflation. And different applicants have different majors with varying degrees of grade inflation. Of course, easier to get an A in English than to get an A in comp sci or math, right? So when applicants have different majors and professors have differing degrees of giving out easy A's, law schools aren't really going to know how to evaluate an A in one topic versus another. And so they look at the GPA, of course, but they place a lot more weight on the LSAT score because it's a more apples to apples comparison between different applicants with different majors. You only took your LSAT in the past couple of years, most likely. Some folks are applying to law school straight out of undergrad. Others did undergrad 20 years ago. And who you were 20 years ago is not who you are today, of course. And so for that reason, they just focus a lot more on the LSAT score. The LSAT score is also considered a valid and reliable admission test because it is strongly correlated with first-year law school grades as well as bar passage rates. The GPA less so. And law schools want to make sure that they're taking people who will be likely to do well in law school and pass the bar exam as well. I see Blueberry's asking, are the last 2 years of undergrad weighed more heavily? I'll say this. I mean, law schools do like to see an upward trend in your grades. And so upward trend being a lot better than a downward trend, of course. They want to see that you're ending on a high note. And so in that sense, they will place a bit more weight on the last 2 years, yes. But at the same time, LSAC takes your transcript and converts it into your LSAC calculated GPA, which is more standardized, and that's what law schools really care about and what they're looking at. So it's kind of like the average of your GPA overall is what really matters, with the last 2 years being a bit more context in terms of recency. But then your LSAT score is weighed even more heavily because it is more recent and more objective, more apples to apples as a comparison. Now your LSAT score, I see Terrific is asking, your LSAT score is good for 5 years. After 5 years, it expires, you got to retake it. Again, it falls off your score report. Now I see Olive is asking, I'm currently a CS and a math major, but my GPA is a 3.8. Would that hurt me when applying to the T14? Not really. I mean, the T14 all have GPA medians of roughly 3.9. So that being said, a 3.8 is technically slightly below that, but not very much. In the context of being CS and math will certainly help. I don't think that you're going to really get punished for a 3.8, but strictly looking at it based on the numbers, you would want to have a higher LSAT score to compensate. Now, the T14 LSAT medians are 170 to 174. And so you would ideally want to have a 175 plus to balance out what is technically a lower GPA, but again, not much lower. And again, the major is certainly, the GPA is that much more impressive because of the major in which you earned it. For those just joining, by the way, I do these lives every single weekday. Same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, wherever you're watching this. I'm offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this now or later. If you haven't already, now is the time, especially for those of you taking the LSAT in June or August. You could book the free tutoring with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. I'll be back tomorrow for the regular daily live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. I may pop in before that to do some more reading comp passage explanations for those of you who have been enjoying those. So keep an eye out for that, and you can watch the previous ones on the YouTube channel. I'll see you all tomorrow. Regardless, in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care. Thanks for joining.